And welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. We have our illustrious upline and mentor of carrot bars, Pete Fedek, here today. And Pete, what's the agenda today in terms of explaining the amazing business of carrot bars? And of course, the timing couldn't be better. I just got reports that I think you sent over, and I've also got independent reports that gold, in fact we called physical delivery gold, is disappearing everywhere, isn't it?
Absolutely. That was an article I got yesterday from an independent source that says that the actually it's right now it's particularly prevalent in silver, but gold will follow in very short order.
Right.
But the key point is that demand has never been as high as it is, yet supply is being pushed under the rug as if it's readily available, so they have an excuse to keep manipulating the price down.
Right.
And it's it's hard to imagine that we're going to see anything change for the.
Okay, no, we hadn't get her. Yeah, just a second. I'm on the phone right now. I'm on the air.
Oh.
Rebook. Yeah.
What did I tell him?
Yeah, tell him we'll rebook. We'll rebook. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. That's okay. I just got interrupted in my show. The show came in and thought it was somebody else who had been booked a long time ago but didn't confirm. And so we were just rebooked. We have a lot of hours of show anyway, so we book them next week.
Oh,
so let's continue. So go ahead.
One of the things I wanted to kind of clarify today and start out with is what is currency and what is money? Because I think sometimes people get confused, and it actually is kind of a fine line between the two, but it makes sense if you lay it out. Currency, first of all, is a medium of exchange. It could be gold, it could be silver, it could be dollars, euros, pounds, yen, etc. Its currency is also a unit of account. Each unit can be serialized or numbered. It's portable. It can be taken anywhere. You can pick it up, put it in your pocket, and so forth. It's durable in that it doesn't just fall apart after one use, and it's divisible. In other words, you can make smaller units out of it. A dollar can be split into quarters, nickels, and dimes, and so forth. And it's fungible. It means that it has the same value in your pocket as it does in mine. It's usable and interchangeable. Now, money is actually all of the above, but it's also a store of value, which is something that holds its value over long periods of time. It's limited in quantity, and it preserves your purchasing power, and it's stable. That's something currency can't do. That's what defines money. That's why gold is money. Currency can be printed or created out of thin air, but money cannot be printed out of thin air. And that's why gold is money, and a paper dollar is not money. It's only currency. I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah, we had some minor technical issues there. So the fact is, what we're dealing with currency. All the currencies in the world are what we call fractional reserve currencies, which means basically the bank only has to hold a certain amount of real money in their vaults, and that ratio has climbed. So the ratio now is higher than it's ever been, even during the Great Depression. I want to go back even further than the money system to the tally stick system and the Lombardy financial collapse back in the century that resulted in birthing the Black Plague. Most people think the Black Plague was birthed by the spreading eastward of disease that went to the area of the Black Sea. But in fact, the grounds on which it was based was the devastation, the economic devastation, and the filth that allowed rats and so on to spread the plague, the Black Death, both the pneumonic and bubonic plagues. And the fact it was a financial system that collapsed back because of the corruption of the system. Well, we have a corrupt system now. In fact, in all of the financial experts, and in fact I just had G. Edward Griffin, who was supposed to pop in today for a while, I'm going to try to see if I can get him in the next segment or at the bottom of the hour for a while. And we'll have him on with us because he wrote the book, both Jekyll Island and the Jekyll Island Combine that actually set up the Federal Reserve System. And most people don't realize Jekyll Island off of South Carolina is where a lot of the global bankers met back a century ago to actually set up the Federal Reserve System here in America, which is basically a British banking takeover of America again, which they've tried numerous times, and they finally succeeded in 1913 on Christmas Eve, where they had a minor number of congressmen and senators to vote on the Federal Reserve System. So what we have right now with the carrot bars is we have the birth of the first and only real gold-backed currency, not just gold where it's in a vault somewhere backing another printable currency, but gold in the currency, whether it's the carrot bars or later this year, carrot bar cash. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because what this means is when you start saving in carrot bars, 6 months, 3 months, 2 years, 5 years from now, you can't have it, number one, seized or devalued by a government. It can't be overprinted because it has actual value in it. In a sense, each currency note and each currency card is a vaulted chunk of gold. And because of that, it's set up in a system where, in a sense, it's like the Hamiltonian credit system. It's based on credit, where you actually have something of value. And, of course, I've talked about this where vendors will start to take carrot bar currency as payment next year. And that's going to be a very radical thing because around the world, vendors, whether it's airline tickets or Amazon or Nutrimedical, can take fractional grams of gold as payment for nutraceuticals. And you can also convert those back and forth to the we call the proxy currencies that are basically worthless. And of course, when it comes to the writing off of debt, the global bankers are going to crash the currencies, bail in your money, and devalue the currency to make their debt go poof. And that's really serious because when their debt goes poof, so does all your value in your money, anything including your pension that's actually in fractional reserve notes in any currency is going to go disappear. That's pretty devastating, isn't it?
Absolutely, and that's kind of what I was leading to, and what the difference is between currency and money is that there's always been pockets of the world that had a crisis in their debt, savings, and currency, and this is the first time in history that it's been worldwide that there's been a crisis in the debt, savings, and currency. And what it means, it's going to be the largest wealth transfer that history has ever seen. But at the same time, that also means it's going to be the greatest opportunity than ever before for people that recognize it and take advantage of it. And that's what we have with carrot bars. We have a multi-pronged product in terms of it's gold that's affordable to the average person. So we have gold by the gram right now. We have 1 gram, 2.5, and 5 gram ingots of gold that are housed in what I call a traveling vault. And so the traveling vault means it holds its value regardless of the fact that it's being shipped around and moved around. And that's something that you can only say about gold that's vaulted. You can't say that about gold that's otherwise been shipped if it's not in the vault. And that's because the minute you ship it, the onus is on you, the recipient, to prove the weight and the purity if you need to transfer it somewhere else. And that's why if you take it, for instance, to a pawn shop, you take an ounce to a pawn shop, a gold coin, you're not going to get the spot price for it because the pawn shop is taking the onus upon themselves that you're covering what was said to be the weight and purity.
Exactly. Amazing situation. What people should realize is this opportunity means as the world currencies, there's 14 immediately in danger, 13 more on the way. Fractional reserve currencies are on the way out, and of course the globalists want it this way because they want to get rid of cash. Back in a minute. So Pete, the way the business works, I have a left and right leg. And that was filled almost immediately. And what we do is anybody that comes in now to Nutrimedical, we will place them under the people that actually sign up now and get their package and get in their auto ship. And we can actually direct shipping too. So when we see people are dynamic that really want to work the business, as things go, we're going to start directing traffic to them, so they'll have a downline that'll build even faster. But anybody that signs up is going to get downline from us at Nutrimedical, because we only succeed if we help other people succeed. That's the neat thing about this business. We only succeed if we help you succeed, which means eventually, as we build a downline, you will be getting free gold. You will be building a separate income coming through your master card in Europe, which will come be a debit card, actually given to you in real currency. You can convert that to gold each month if you want to set up an auto pay, an auto purchase setup, which is, I just talked to one gentleman back in New York City, and he just signed up, and he'd already had 10 people meeting with him already, willing to sign up already in New York. That's how fast this is going to grow. And we've only been doing it for, 3 weeks now? 2 weeks and a half, 3 weeks?
That's about right. Yep.
And already, and people say, well, what if I get in 3 or 6 months? You'll still build a giant download, because we're going to have a constant flow of people. Plus, the people we sponsor are going to be dynamic, and they're going to build downlines too. I mean, they're going to be like us. We call geodes. That's what the term is. And if you want to build a network of people that are in a purchasing network for gold and a network to try to help other people save systematically, and also build a downline that's going to help to have an alternative income. I also want to see this as a platform for lots of other things. We talked about one of those projects, which we won't talk about yet on air. But one of my projects I'm working with Professor McKinney is an encrypted bartering network that I'm hoping will have operational by next year. And that'll mean basically anybody will be able to go through our bartering network and just like Uber, they can rate the seller and the buyer, and it'll be set up so it'll be an app. So you can have a phone app, a computer app, whatever, and you can buy and sell products based on credit. So people could even get credit for things. I see the sky's the limit with carrot bars. Vendors are going to start receiving it because it's going to be more stable than currencies. What are you going to do when a currency is being devalued at a rate like in Greece weekly? What are you going to do, or yearly or quarterly? I expect a quarterly drop in the value of the U.S. dollar, maybe 10, 20% coming up this fall. I expect other currencies will be considerably more devalued because we're the best of the lot. But all currencies are under attack, aren't they? That's
right. That's right. And kind of alluding to what I had talked about earlier, that this is the greatest crisis ever, it's also the greatest opportunity. Most Americans are working harder than they've ever worked. They're living longer, and they need to realize they need to delay their retirement because their dollars aren't buying what they used to buy. And
the average person now, it turns out that half of the people that are planning on retirement have less than $10,000 saved.
That's right.
And we're not talking about that's money aside from, let's say, their host equity. But the problem is anything that's denominated in dollars is going to get devalued.
That's right.
So it's a very serious thing. And, of course, what I see, also the commodities going up, the price of food. Food prices are going to skyrocket because commodities around the world, there's a shortage of food caused by climate shift. And it's not what the Pope says or these climate morons that don't understand climate shift. What's going on is that the world is changing toward a cooling period called a Maunder period. And while it changes gears, the fluctuation in climate causes famine. And people need to be aware of that. Some of it's also amplified by geoengineering the climate, which globalists are doing. And to be honest with you, they're doing a very poor job of it, because if they're trying to modulate the climate so it makes it more even and evens out rainfall and so on, they're amplifying the problems and making it much worse. But people should realize the bottom line is food's going to get more expensive. Your income's not going to stretch as far. And if you don't have an alternative income, you're going to suffer seriously. And it turns out 85% of the people that go bankrupt, if they had $400 more a month, wouldn't. Now, what would you do if you had not $400, but say $4,000 or $10,000 a month? What would you do if you could work this business hard enough that after a period of time, we have one lady last year, in 1 year, built a network of 17,000 people. Now, she's got a 9-figure income now. Okay? That's serious. Now, maybe you're not that one person, but if you could build a network with us helping you of hundreds or thousands, you're going to have a significant additional income, and you're going to have saved gold that when they do devalue the currencies, you're not going to go to the bank and say, oh my gosh. People need to be aware that what's going to happen is going to be devastating. And the problem is that we can see that coming. Everybody, all the financial experts, from Gerald Celente, and I get his newsletter, to Joel Skousen, takes a softer approach that's not going to be a total crash. But all the top financial experts tell us, including now the comics, had its bank vaults raided recently, this last week. I guess there's so much gold going off the shelves, and of course at the same time they're driving the price down, which I've warned for several years now with our financial experts, going back to Bob Chapman. When you see the price of gold dive for the floor, that's when buy like crazy, because what's going on, the globalists are storing real physical gold at the same time they're playing with paper gold to drive the price down. So even stocks and gold mines is being pushed down despite the fact there's a shortage of gold. And the Chinese and Russians and the Indians are buying gold like crazy, even on the black market. True, isn't it?
You better believe it. Any means that they can, they're using against the what I call the regular folk like you and I.
Right. And of course, what will happen, and this is a scenario, and I don't want to give dates, but let's say, just for the sake of the scenario, I expect after September a correction of the world economy where the world currencies are going to see a crash. It's obvious with the Chinese stock market crash and multi-level crashes, boom, boom, in the last few months. They've had a 35% contraction of their stock market. That's huge. People don't understand. They were the largest economy in the world. They're not anymore. They're number 2 again. And if America thinks we're resistant to that, can't happen, I'm sorry. 90% of the printed fractional reserve currency in the world is in dollars, either in physical dollars or electronic dollars. And we can suffer because the globalists can't get rid of the debt now. It's so big. The debt is so big that they can't even make money on derivatives. That's crazy, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the answer, of course, to the fiat debacle in currency is to exchange it for real money.
Right.
And what's different about what Carrot Bars is doing is that you can get paid to show others how to do the same thing, which is open up a free gold saving account and start saving gold. And every time you refer somebody that does that, and they start buying gold, you earn a commission on that, and so on and so forth. It gets paid, goes down to infinity. And what I'd like to do is actually kind of paint I like painting pictures in people's minds of what the effect of gold and paper currency are. In 1936,
I guess we'll have to keep that thought when we come back with Pete Fettig and gold. The Carrot Bars Gold plan is a plan for everyone, and everyone can afford it. It's not expensive to get involved. We will help the business building with you to give you a brighter future, not only for your physical health with Nutrimeds, but now with Carrot Bars for your financial health. And so let's continue that story, Pete, and we're going to be connecting also, by the way, with G. Edward Griffin. We did have some snafus there with getting him connected, but that's good because we get started with the first few segments. We'll probably have G. Edward back because he's wrote the Creature from Jekyll Island book, which is pretty famous. It talks about the creature of the Federal Reserve System, which, by the way, makes 90% of the world's money. In fact, in places like Belize, the U.S. dollar is their currency. In many countries around the world, whether it's prostitutes or gun salespeople or even exchanging rubles or other currencies, even in yuan in China, they still use the U.S. dollar as a standard. It's a standard for the petrodollar. Welcome to the program, G. Edward Griffin. We have you on with Pete Fettig, our upline expert on gold with Carrot Bars. And you wrote the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island book a number of years ago. And what do you think, G. Edward, of the current financial situation of the fractional reserve currencies, because you're an expert on it, and how close are we to catastrophe? Because it looks like a series of catastrophes is in the offing very soon.
Well, Bill, that's a good question. It's kind of an opening door to you could go in almost any direction with that. I guess going from the general to the specific, I suppose the answer is I don't think that the current economic situation is very attractive to anybody, except a few people who are at the center of the money-making machines. They create money out of nothing, lend it into existence, and then live off of the interest on nothing. That's quite a racket. Those people do well, but everybody else suffers. And this is not news to, I'm sure, your listeners. In fact, it's not news to most people by now. They know that the bankers are doing very well, but the people at large are not doing too well. But the real question is, can it be sustained? And, of course, the answer, obviously, when you think about it, is that no, it cannot be sustained. You cannot continue to reduce the purchasing power of a monetary system to beyond zero. So there's a point where it comes to an end. But where that point is a great mystery to everyone. And is there going to be a big collapse? Is it going to blow up in everybody's face? Or is it just going to gradually ooze into the ground? These are theoretical questions. But the real thing is we know it's coming to an end. And it always has. And this is not just an opinion, because we have a lot of historical reference to support that conclusion.
Right.
Civilizations previously have gone through exactly the same thing, starting way back with the ancient civilizations of Greece and Rome, and on down through history. Whenever the monetary systems have been debauched by their governments and their banking institutions, the economy collapses, and soon after that, of course, the nation collapses, and they're taken over by another aggressive civilization or nation on the rise, and then it goes through the same cycle. And so it's like a flower that blooms and then withers and dies, and the seeds fall to earth, and a new flower comes up, and that's the cycle of history. So we're in that cycle. We can't say, gee, I wonder what's going to happen. We look at a flower and we say, I wonder if that flower is going to last forever. No, we know it's not. It's going to go through a cycle. And so this economic cycle that we're in is coming. We're well past the withered category, I would say. But how much longer we have before it's really devastating, I just have no idea.
Let me raise a couple questions, because I like to try to amalgamate all the financial experts like yours and Gerald Celentes and all the other experts together and kind of imagineer into the future. And a statement that was made recently by the head of the Fed Reserve, Janet Yellen, she has a good name, Yellen, she's yelling about money, and she's telling us now in the last few months that she wants to raise the Fed interest rate, which of course is the overnight bank rate, which they can't do unless they, quote, get rid of physical cash. And that, to me, was the largest red flag of what's next. I don't see necessarily just a collapse of the system. I think there'll be some partial collapse, not a complete collapse, but the real goal is they want to get rid of physical money and move to a biometric digital money, which means they think they can continue this game beyond this because they've actually gotten rid of the cost of actually printing money or having money in our pockets and having total control. Do you see that as a possibility? Because that's where I think, if I was to say next is more pain plus the disappearance of physical cash.
It's definitely on the horizon. They've been talking about that for decades, and it's the disappearance of physical cash is not really necessary from their point of view when you think about it. From the Ponzi scheme they're playing, they can still create money and have it printed or appear as digital entries in a checkbook and all of that sort of thing. But the disappearance of cash is essential for the disappearance of personal anonymity, personal independence, being private. This exposes everybody to absolute monitoring of every financial transaction they make, and you can't do much in life without a financial transaction occurring somewhere online. So it's a means of observing, monitoring, and ultimately controlling humans. And I think that's another aspect of it that doesn't really get enough attention when we talk about financial matters,
Well, the LIBOR scandal and some people that were whistleblowers in Switzerland, they have now dug deep enough in that basically everybody's accounts around the world are becoming open, and there really is very little what we call real true financial security. For example, if they want to seize the money, the $40 billion plus that Mr. Putin has, they could do it tomorrow, but there would be geopolitical and military consequences to doing something like to someone as powerful as Mr. Putin and his oligarchs.
Absolutely.
It's a very dangerous game that they're playing now. We have Pete Fettigan talking about carrot bars. I'm not sure if you've heard about the system. It was invented out of Germany as a fractional part of a gram of gold, and it's actually in the carrot bar cards, but also it'll be, by the end of the year, actually in physical currency. So the physical currency will be vaulted gold. Have you ever heard of that system?
Oh, yes, I'm familiar with that. Mm-hmm.
Now, the carrot bar system, and we got involved just 3 weeks ago, and we were already building a significant network. What I'd like to see eventually is not just carrot bars being accepted as vendors, but also have a carrot bar as what I call credit or bartering system, where you don't loan money and get interest, because I think the devil is in the interest and the blowing up of money, but in credit being able to provide services of goods and services and having an electronic bartering system where it becomes, in a sense, the gold tally stick of exchange. So someone can say, I can provide 30 hours of, say, computer work. They've already been vetted as a buyer and seller in the network, just like Uber Taxi vets the driver as well as the passengers. And you can eventually have a bartering system where you could have encrypted bartering that would be parallel and separate from the so-called fraction reserve, debt-based currency. Because I think it's going to blow up to the point where if we get a hiccup here in North America and in the Western world, other nations are going to starve to death because they aren't going to be able to buy commodities for food. And I think that the start of that will be significantly this fall. The commodity situation is real bad. The currencies corrections are going to really kill a lot of nations already under great problems like drought, like the Middle East. And even with things like the contracts that were signed up by the Chinese, 35% drop in their stock market, I don't think people realize that as these things happen, there's going to be a convergence of contracting commodities and contracting currencies and buying power, and we're going to see world crisis develop, aren't we?
Yeah, I think all of that is true. And I was, as you were speaking, I was trying to carefully separate the two threads of thought there. One is, one thread, if I may summarize it, has to do with some of the developing crises, the problems that are building. And the other thread, which was the earlier one, which was what is the solution to all of that? Should we have carrot bars? Should we have gold? Should we have electronic money? All this sort of thing. And I sense that we're reaching the end of the segment.
We'll run the end of the segment, but we're coming back in just a minute. Stay right there, G. Edward and Pete Fettig. We'll be Edward Griffin. G. Edward will be back at 1:15 on Thursday with Pete, and we're going to talk about this. Pete, when you have G. Edward here, you have some questions, G. Edward. We're framing the idea of an alternate economy, and really the carrot bars is going to expand to become an alternate economy. By the end of the year, there'll be carrot bar notes. There'll be vendors taking carrot bar currency around the world, whether it's airlines or Nutrimedical or vendors, grocery stores, and so on. They'll realize it's a stable currency that cannot be manipulated by governments or devalued or contracted, because every year your dollar at the minimum is contracting anywhere from 2 to 5% in value. Even if it just sits in the bank, you're not getting value. It's actually contracting. Do you see the carrot bars or the spin-offs from it like bartering systems and so on as, for example, that's why we have the cryptocurrencies. There's at least 12 now, like Bitcoin. They're out there trying to mine, but they don't have anything to back it. They're mining currencies based on numerical calculations to actually create a mined currency system called Bitcoin and these other non-fractional reserve currencies that supposedly has a limited number of solutions to their mathematical problems, so they figure that it has value because it can't be expanded ad infinitum like a printing press. What do you think?
Well, I've looked at all of those, of course, and they all have great interest, and in some cases, like the Bitcoin and the method by which they're used not only to create money, exchangeable units, but a system that can bypass the banks for the settlement of accounts and the conducting of e-commerce and that sort of thing without going through banks. That's all very interesting. Nobody talks much about that side of it. But the point I wanted to make at the close of the last session is that we can look at all of these different emerging technologies, and some of them look very good. Some of them I put big question marks around because of certain flaws, at least in my view. But the bottom line is I think that the key to finding the right solution is to get the government out of it in terms of what we call, the the laws
money.
that come along, the I can't think of the word right now, legal tender laws. Because what that legal tender law does is to say we in the government are going to force you, the citizens, to use our currency. What we say is the best currency, and you have no choice. You have to use it or you go to prison. And once you give any group, whether it's government or banks or even a corporation or a group of corporations or a fraternity or so, I don't care, give any group of people the power to force someone else to accept whatever they create as money, you've got a losing system. You're right back to the problem. So once we get rid of legal tender laws and allow people the freedom to experiment and to choose whichever system they like the best, some people say, oh, well, that'll be chaos. No, not at all. It'll be a very exciting a mix of different currencies being offered. But eventually, the strongest one or two will come to the top through actual experience, not through theory, not through, well, we sit here and say, well, we think this is the best system, well, we think that's the best system. Let the market decide, and it will decide and choose the best one. And as long as that's part of the formula, I'd like to see all of these approaches started up and experimented with.
Yeah, and the thing that I like particularly about Bitcoin compared to a numerical system alone is that it has intrinsic value in it that can't be amplified. In other words, it goes through the London Bullion Market Exchange, so it's certified. Then you can then set bartering up, and you can have a credit-based system. See, all of these fractional reserve currencies are debt-based, and they're based on usury or interest. Whereas if you have a credit-based system, for example, let's say a small country can produce a certain amount of goods and services, you could actually actuarially go through that country and then determine the value of what those people can produce in goods and services or intellectual property, and then they could receive credit to build infrastructure and do other things based on that ability, rather than taking out a loan where they have to physically pay interest on the loan. And of course, with Greece, it just keeps on expanding. So of the $72 billion they're going to give Greece, only probably $9 billion goes to the Greek people. The rest of it is actually going back to the banks to pay off the expanding debt. And
it's the Ponzi. That's the Ponzi element. They have
right,
to keep
and
going.
that Ponzi element has to be taken out. And it doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin or anything else. The thing I like particularly about the carrot bars is because it deals with a physical commodity that people are familiar with, that can have that is vaulted gold in the currency notes, or electronically can be encrypted to the point where it can't be fiddled with, it can't be hacked into, and so it means people can. I'll give you an example of my what I want to see. I'd like to see a giant network of people, the carrot bars and vendors that can buy and sell with gold, and then so if the government decides the currency, you can still buy a loaf of bread or a side of beef or vegetables if you're a vegetarian. You can still buy the things you need in order to sustain your life. You can still pay your bills. I'd like to also see it so that the average person can get into it, so it basically has no downward limit. In other words, a person who's on a minimal income can get involved with the system, so it doesn't have a high limit where you have to be an investor to get into it. It needs to be so that virtually it's available to everybody. That's
all of those are really strong features, but as I said a moment ago, unless we have, on top of all of these theories, unless we have the concept of freedom to choose a currency, nothing will work, because the government will come in and say, carrot bars are illegal. Owning gold is illegal. Anybody that uses these things will go to prison. We'll close down your website if you accept these things as currency. They'll make it illegal. See, so without that overriding understanding that we have to reform the political process, none of these things are going to work unless we have freedom to choose.
Well, I think we do have that freedom right now, and that's the thing.
Right now, yes.
Yeah, right now we do, and of course, I think it would be unenforceable, especially. I give an example. I've said this before. I have a background in advanced computing, and I worked and took care of people working on presidential level classified things like the STIX protocol for Lucent Technologies for targeting and long-range missiles, U.S. Space Command, etc., because I worked taking care of people in the mid-'90s in Colorado in these areas. And I had friends who were working on what's called cloud computing and encryption, to the point where we could encrypt on the backbone of this whole supernet system, which we have, that's much faster than the regular internet, billions of times faster. And that would completely be undetectable. In other words, if the government decided to shut down the internet and broadcasting and talk shows like this, we would be 6 months and we'd be back up. It would be fully encrypted, fully illegal, and it would be impossible to stop us. The same way with anything, even whether it's Bitcoin, they would be the same thing. People would find a way to get around it. Any technology that the government could try to do to control us, it would be a period of time, but we would break it. And that's what they're particularly freaked out about. That's why the government doesn't know what they want to do next, but they want to make sure that either, to me, they want to use the currency to enslave the population so we don't develop alternative ways to not be under their control. Because really money is just a way of controlling the population. And the rise of at least 12 currencies now, Bitcoin, Carrot Bars to me is the best of the new alternatives that deals with something that's an actual commodity people are familiar with, because it allows people to have something in their possession that has intrinsic value, not just a numerical sequence like Bitcoin. So, Pete, what do you think when you've heard, you ever heard on these different theories? What do you think?
I would. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, what do you think, Pete? What question would you ask G. Edward? Because we'll have him back on. Because you've done a lot of theoretical analysis, and you've shown that the fractional reserve system, and I know most of the people I call the chaos masters, really they aren't in control of the world. Most of these meetings, like the Bank of International Settlements and so on, are all just marketing to try to tell the globalists that they're in control, which they're not in control of anything, not even their bowel movements. And what they're doing is they want to steer the economy so they maintain some degree of control, but they're going to lose control because the financial system can't continue this way. What do you think of this comparative currencies of Bitcoin and so on to Carrot Bars?
Well, one of the things that I do, of course, like is that all of the alternatives like Bitcoin and so forth, they're waking people up. And I think G. Edward certainly points out that, that's the first thing is having the freedom of choice. And for people to wake up and realize that there's a problem in the first place in the currency itself, that's the first step. Second step is which thing do you decide to use from there.
Exactly, yeah. And I look strongly at the things like Bitcoin and so on, and I think, no, we need something that everybody can get involved with. It can't be fiddled by some computer wizard that'll eventually break the code down the road or has some breakable reason to get inside it. And so there could be Bitcoin to me is raising the issue, but the solution to me so far is Carrot Bars and what can be done with it in the future. And we'll talk about that again on Thursday.
Everybody recognizes that gold is money.
Yeah, exactly. It's a standard that's been around forever, from the Roman Empire and before. Back in a moment with hour number 2. Pete and G. Edward will be back on Thursday. If you have questions, call us. We'll be back in a moment. And Tim Alexander, major updates of what's going on with the Syrian air campaign by the United States. We'll be back in a moment.